for tithing. If that happens, we suffer from a greedy heart condition. Instead of looking at God as giving us an increase, as a blessing, I got my hand out, I'm ready for you to pay me back now. That is the example. That's an example of a greedy heart, because we believe God is required. God wants us to have a generous heart. Is it possible that some people are born with a generous heart? Are there natural born givers? Can we say that some people have an easy time being obedient to God when it comes to sharing their resources? I think the answer is yes and no. No, there are no natural born givers, but yes, it is possible for some people to have an easier time giving, and it has to do, of course, with our heart. When our hearts are diseased with selfishness or grieving or greed, the only thing that we can do is ask for a heart transplant. You see, my heart was born selfish, but it was born again generous. My heart was born selfish, but it was born again generous. Look at Deuteronomy chapter 15, start to read verse 12 this time. If any of you people, Hebrew men or women, sell themselves to you and serve you 6 years, in the 7th year you must let them go free. And when you release them, do not send them away empty-handed. Supply them liberally from your flock, your threshing floor, and your winepress. Give to them as the Lord your God has blessed you. It says supply them liberally. It's talking about being free and generous with our possessions. There's not many wine presses or threshing floors here in Thompson. But what about the resources we have? It says be generous. That's the heart God wants us to have when we give. But we aren't born with that heart attitude. God needs to transplant it into us. That needs to be cultivated and nurtured. And that happens when we have a heart of gratitude. A heart of gratitude is the opposite of the heart of greed. The greedy heart feels entitled. The grateful heart is thankful. Look at verses 14 and 15 again. Supply them liberally from your flock. God says be generous because you were slaves and now you're free. I redeemed you. I bought you back. Remember that and be thankful. Demonstrate your thankfulness by being generous. Generosity flows out of gratefulness. If you aren't grateful, you aren't generous. In Luke 7, there's the story of the sinful woman that comes and breaks open the alabaster jar on Jesus' feet. And she pours it all out there, and Simon is there, and he says, what a waste! What a waste of all that money! We could have done so much with that money. And Jesus gives them a lesson. He says, if there's 2 men, one owes $50, one owes $500, neither has any hope of ever paying that back on their own. If they are forgiven, who is more grateful? The one who's forgiven more. Here's the issue. Most followers of Christ have forgotten how much they've been forgiven. We look at our lives going, oh, I haven't been that bad, Pastor. I grew up in the church. I've always been kind of good. I know I need Jesus, but I was never that bad. Well, see, that's because you're looking at things on your scale, not God's scale. It isn't how bad you are, it's how good God is that makes the difference. We are so far from His standard if we forget how much we've been forgiven. Here's a point we always need to remember when it comes to our attitude towards our finances, that God looks at our hearts, not the check. Now, I know lots of you don't write checks. I was shocked. Pastor Fred had a check. He said, I brought a void check to get my direct deposit. I was like, well, you have a check? I didn't think anybody under 30 ever had checks. My kids, I don't think they've ever had a check in their lives. I mean, besides a paycheck, never had a personal check. It's all debit or whatever, or e-transfer. But God looks at our hearts, not the check. It doesn't matter how many times we listen to a message or teaching on giving. People always get hung up on the size of the check. They get tripped up on little details about the how much. There's so many people in churches who don't know, mostly because they haven't been taught that for God, the amount of the check makes no difference. It's the attitude of your heart that matters. I trust you will never, ever forget that. I want to share something with you that's going to help clear up a bit of confusion. Did you know that Scripture never says we are to give our tithe? It doesn't say that anywhere. What are you talking about? Pastor, you spent the last 5 weeks telling us that we need to bring our tithes. What are you talking about? It never says give our tithes. Right, correct. It never says give our tithes. Look at Chronicles 31, verses 5 to 6. And as soon as the commandment came abroad,
The children of Israel brought in abundance the first fruits of corn, wine, and oil, and honey, and all of the increase of the field, and all the tithes of all the things brought they in abundantly. And concerning the children of Israel and Judah that dwelt in the cities of Judah, they also brought in the tithes of oxen and sheep, and the tithe of holy things which were consecrated unto the Lord their God, and laid them by heaps. Malachi 3:10 says, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse. When the Bible talks about tithing, it never says give. You know why? You can't give. We said that the tithe, the first 10%, God says that's mine. Look, I can't give you Pastor Colton's car because it's not mine to give. You can't give God your tithe because it doesn't belong to you. It's his. You can bring his tithe, but you can't give a tithe. You can't give something that isn't yours. If you want to give, that comes after. Those are offerings. I can only give or offer you what is mine. The first 10% isn't mine. So tithing is a test of your heart. God tests us with our finances. He says, are you going to bring your tithe in faith, believing that I will supply enough for all of your needs? Are you going to sacrifice the first and the best to me so that the rest can be redeemed? And will you be generous because your heart is filled with gratitude for what I've done for you? Some people still get stuck up on the idea that if they pay their 10%, that somehow that buys them God's blessing. That God is somehow obligated to do something for them because they have checked something off their list. I've said it before, I'll say it again. God doesn't want or need your money. All he cares about is you and your heart. There was a group of people who thought they could simply maintain a certain list of rules and regulations, and that would earn them something from God. If they were good at keeping a set of rules and regulations, that God would have to look favorably on them. They thought they could impress or manipulate God. Look at Matthew chapter 23. I'll just give you a few excerpts of Jesus' speech to the Pharisees. I'm going to ask the worship team to come and begin playing. Matthew 23, verses 23 to 28. What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are careful to tithe even the tiniest income from your herb gardens, but you ignore the most important aspects of the law, justice, mercy, and faith. You should tithe